Yes, it's not just a chalkboard. I'm here. I am. Hope you know I was playing around for you. That's what I was doing, playing around for you. But I shouldn't get on here and just start drinking water like I haven't had a break or something, which I barely had. You can tell by the sweat on my brow. Okay, we are here, and I've been saying some prayers as I've been working really hard because been sitting in this. I had to change chairs out, my leather chair. I needed to put some Murphy oil soap on it. It's the first thing I did. Oh my gosh, then changed it out. And then Murphy oil soap this one down. And then couldn't get Lucy back inside once we sat outside and held her like this, and she was like a hot water bottle. How about that? I think I said I'm Dr. Annette Feravich. I don't think I completed everything. I'm the teacher. We're here in the spiritual classroom. And today, I don't have my other light on. Today, I am trying to figure out what we're talking about here and where we're going to go with this classroom, because that's not always easy. And so as I was thinking about this, so we've been covering some ground because we took a look at, scripture is what we've been doing. We've been looking at scripture. So we looked at Job. We're trying to find out who is God, right? Basically, who is God? So I've had a lot of information so far, and we kind of went through the Bible up to Moses, and we started talking about the laws, and we're also talking about the laws. We've been talking about the laws in Early Bird Classroom. Yeah. And what else did we talk about? We talked about intellectualization, right? And I started talking about that relative to, let me make sure my streaming is on. And I started talking about that relative to intellectualization, relative to contrasting it to our emotions. So, and in all of my classes, somewhere along the line, we're talking about emotions. And then the last time we were here yesterday, we were talking about, is God an emotion, right? And so I was kind of making a case for, is God an emotion? And then I brought out one of my favorite books that got me kind of started on all of this, which is on destructive emotions. And can God then be destructive emotions? Of course, we know he can't be destructive emotions. But what about that? Explain it to me, because if he can't be destructive emotions, but I am made in his image and likeness, and I do experience things like anger, right? But so did Jesus. So that's okay, right? And we talked about jealousy, and we know God experiences jealousy as well, right? So now we're starting to look at some of those negative, but what about fear? What about hostility? I would have to say sometimes, would you say God was hostile towards Moses? I'll use a specific example. Was God hostile towards Moses? So God wanted to kill Moses. Is that hostility? Is that murder? There was intention. It was because things weren't working out. I don't know. Because remember, what did we say in this book with the destructive emotions that we saw neurologically was that mindful meditators who are expert Buddhist meditators were able to change their disgust into compassion. So Does God has to have a full understanding of hostility, right? We can't be hostile creatures if without God having a full understanding of what that is, right? So, and what about fear? And what about fear? I'd have to say absolutely not. God does not. God is fearless. I would have to say God is fearless, right? You can put your comments below. Tell me what you think. But I would have to say that because I have always said that the opposite of love is not hate, because hate has way too many emotions to just be the opposite of love. I've always said the opposite of love is fear. So, based on that hypothesis, that educated guess, I would have to say God does not fear. Pretty solid about that. So, and that was one of the negative emotions that was brought up in that book, Destructive Emotions. So fear was. So that is an emotion we feel, but I would have to say if it's the opposite of love, it's the absence of God. So that's why God can't experience fear, because it's the absence of him. And it has to be the absence of him, because if it's the opposite of love, it's the absence of love. Good stuff is what I think. That's what I think. I think that's good stuff. So now, this goes to your sort of liberal thinking, touchy-feely kind of stuff that says that then no emotion is bad. Well, in its form, it probably is, right? So we did say that, the Dalai Lama because we did not look in God's, we didn't do an MRI on God. So we have to use remember, the physical world in this classroom to explain the spiritual world is what we're doing. In other classes, we use the spiritual world to explain, what's going on today in the physical world. But in this classroom, we use the physical world to help us see the spiritual world. Okay? So, in the MRI, Dalai Lama is able to transform his disgust into what looked like compassion. How do we know that? Because here's where disgust is activated in the insula, to be specific. And here's where compassion is activated in the mirror neurons, to be specific. All right? So we know. We could, and I just totally simplified it to show you that I do kind of know what I'm talking about, at least a little bit. Although I am not a neuropsychologist, and I do wish I had the training there. I sure do wish I had the training. Wish that I could look at a few MRIs, just a few of them, to get a real good idea about what I might want to know about them. Because, the MRI is a great place to do a lot of twisting and turning of data. Why? Because the brain, and this is what was so amazing about the research that was being done in this book, was that they were showing, so an MRI, think about it. An MRI is showing brain activation, but it's showing brain activation. Watch everything that I'm doing here, including bumping that table. I'm gonna make sure I'm not wrecking my chairs with my butt here. Getting creases in the leather there. So when we have an MRI, just look at everything that I was just doing. Imagine if I were moving around just like that in the MRI, what would happen? So the MRI takes a picture of activation. As neurons are activating, it shows activation. It doesn't show it coming on. It just shows this has been activated at this point. This has been activated at this point. This is activated at that point. So we can get a timeline there, right? So we know when, for example, we introduce a stimuli. So we introduce a color, a square with blue on it. All right, so we introduce a square with blue on it, and we see what's activated. Oh, okay, so this activates when we see squares. All this pattern activates when we see squares, when we see blue. I just showed you a blue square. Could be blue, could be square, could be, you know, is it one-dimensional? Would that be or two-dimensional? Yeah, that's a one-dimensional figure. Could be a one-dimensional figure that's being activated as well, right? And then there's just from this blue square. Then there's the sounds that are going on. There's the movement of my body. All of those things are activating areas in my brain. So what at any one time might you see? You might see the whole brain lit up, or, a good portion. All kinds of stuff lit up that's not associated with the blue square that I put in front of your face. Or let's move it along into less scientific, less sterile areas, more spiritual areas. Let's say of a crying baby. Now imagine all of the areas of the brain that are being activated, right? So the point here is that when you're looking at something like brain activation, remember in MRIs and we're looking at, brain activity, remember, this is really not at all. It's progressive in technology. We are seeing what is activated. We have a timeline so we can see when it's activated. It's good stuff. And we're doing it without ever cutting inside your head. That's good stuff. Yeah, too bad you can't do heart surgery. Medical industry, a little bit cleaner like that. Oh, what's going on? I'm sorry. Medicine and surgery? Is that your deal? Seems like it hasn't moved in the last 70 years. So, but this technology is really advanced. It really is. We are seeing all this activation, but there's so much room for a read. There's so much room for a spin. Because first of all, at any given time, all these things could be activated. So at any given time, I have to eliminate what I'm not measuring. Well, that's not really that hard to do, actually, as long as I have a lot of measures, right? So, but if they all have the same sound at the same time I introduce the blue square, I might think activation in this area is due to the sound. Now, there's all kinds of things I can do, right? Don't introduce the blue square. You eliminate the sound when there's no blue square. It's there when there is a blue square, but it's also there when there's not a blue square. So activation doesn't have to do with the blue square. Okay, this is the spiritual classroom, and I'm talking about what's going on inside of your brain. And I'm talking about that because what I want to do is I want to get to how important it is. So switching gears here, we've been talking about intellectualization, right? And having these emotions, and are these emotions good for us, right? And what do we know about them? What do we know about these emotions? And again, we can look at some activation, but we really don't know a whole lot. But there was really a lot of good information that came out of here. We can see when you go from a negative area of your brain, like the insula, and that's supported, right? Disgust, a negative area of my brain, into a positive area of my brain. And again, like I said, I oversimplified it, and there are a lot of ways to twist the data, and you cannot count on only what people are saying as far as neurological data. all right, or neuroimaging, brain imaging. You've got to really make sure that the person has a good reputation and understands the overlap in brain imaging and understands how to do, a process of elimination, basically, in order to find out really is it activated. So is God, right, experiencing, which is the question that we have, is God experiencing all these emotions? And I'm saying it's possible that he is, right, with the exception of fear. With the exception of fear. Because that is the absence of love. That's my hypothesis. Opposite of love is not hate, it's fear. So it's the absence of love, and therefore God can't experience the absence of love. So where are we going from here? A $500 response to a $5 problem, right? And that's the title for today. I don't know if I have put that even up there yet. $500 reaction to a $5 problem. And what I wanted to highlight here with this is that, so if God can experience every single emotion that we do, or remember, I'm putting it that way because God can't experience, of course, God can experience anything he wants to experience. But does God experience negative emotions? And since we're made in his image, I suggest that he does. Bug there. I suggest that he does. So what does he do with it then? What does he do with jealousy? What does God do with anger? Is there, yeah, sure, mistrust, right? What does God do with those negative emotions? He experiences them. What do I do with them? Well, it doesn't turn out so good, right? When I experience negative emotions, for me, it doesn't really turn out so well. And the more negative emotions that I experience, and the less experience I have with those negative emotions, the more negative emotions that I experience, and what did I say? And the less experience I have with those negative emotions, the more negative emotions that I experience as they stack up, and the less experience I have with them, right? So I don't have experience with somebody, let's just say, I don't have experience with somebody coming in my face and saying, you think you're all that. You think you're the star of the show. Somebody did say that to me. It was staff. It was staff who said it to me. Of course I think I'm the star of the show. I'm the only one here. What the heck? So maybe you don't have experience with somebody coming and confronting you like that, or not a lot of experience. So what do? I don't know what to do about that. I don't know what to do about that. Okay, so the more negative experiences that we have, right? Conflict, jealousy, anger, envy, abuse, right? So you stack those up, and then, but I haven't had experience with them, so I don't know what to do, right? Oh, it's a new experience, right? So a traumatic event. I lost somebody I love. Not used to it. Okay. So the more experience, so we're getting to a $500 problem. We're getting to right now we're going to work on this end of this, all right? So we're getting to a $500 problem. We can't have a $500 problem, right? So that's what I'm talking about right now. Right now I'm talking about a real $500 problem, right? So we have negative experiences stacking up with little experience with any one of those. So I don't know how to react. I don't know what to do, right? Financial problems. Never had them before, right? Let's just say that's what's going on. Never had them before. So now I'm having a negative experience and I don't have a lot of experience with that. Now I'm really having to problem solve. I'm really having to problem solve. So this is where the rubber hits the road. This is where the shit hits the fan. This is where push comes to shove. What do you do? What do you do? What do you do when you have a $500 problem? What do you do? Okay? I'm talking about this in the critical thinking classroom where I'm talking about defense mechanisms as well. So you want to think about that a little bit where I get the details there and go to that classroom. I do some overlap. I don't do a lot of overlap, right? Because we're talking about something different here. And what I'm talking about here is really the erosion of your spirit, where this is a spiritual classroom. So I'm talking about it from a critical thinking, scientific perspective in the critical thinking classroom, and philosophically from the philosophical classroom. But right now, we're talking about from a spiritual classroom. So you have a real $500 problem. What do you do? What do you do? And you want to think about that, right? So we talked about philosophical class, writing it out, right? We talked to the critical thinking class. Are these defense mechanisms? We're talking here, does God share these emotions? What kind of emotions are they? What do you do in that situation when you have a $500 problem, which could be a stack of problems, and some of them you've never dealt with before in your life? The loss of your spouse. Okay? All right, so now we're identifying where our emotional baggage comes in, right? Where our past childhood experiences come in that we haven't dealt with so much, where our ideas of justice come in and consequences come in, right? All of those things, right? Some real spitfire emotions, right? They're just right up there, like sparklers, right? Right? They're just up there. Your emotions, right? When you've got this. Now, what do you do? What do you do? All right? So we've talked about in critical thinking again. We can also take a look at some very specific behaviors that we go into relative to, can you describe that age bracket? Real important stuff. Really important stuff. But from a spiritual perspective, everything we're talking about in other classrooms boils down to this word that we don't talk about in the other classrooms. Here, you get the overlap. You want to look at it from a practical perspective, go to the other classrooms. You want to look at your $500 problem from a spiritual perspective. This is where you come to this classroom. And the word is, where do we go in the spiritual classroom? How are we describing this? With lies. With lies. With lies. With lies. We can overcome. We're spiritual beings. We don't have to prove ourselves to our God. He knows our hearts. In fact, we are written in the palm of his hand. He knows every hair on our head. If he knows when a sparrow falls from the sky, do you not think he knows when your tears, the number of the tears that you have cried? Right? I have a tickle in my throat right now. He made all of those promises. Does he not know? And he didn't say, by the way, in order for you to relieve yourself of your sins, you need to go save the rainforest. No. He said, 7 nights in a row, walk around the wall, toot a horn on the seventh night, do it 7 times, doot, 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 the walls will fall. He said, go wash yourself in, what was it? Was it the Sea of Galilee? Was that it? He's like, I don't want to do that. Are you kidding me? You're God. Can't you do better than that? Oh, really? Because that was so hard? Go wash yourself 7 times? 7 times? That was so hard? To relieve yourself of your $500 problem, which with leprosy had to be like a $5 million problem? You know, with the Canaanites and the walls of Jericho, my $5 million problem, that's all I got to do? But God, I have a $500 problem right here. Okay, so again, what do we have to do? It's insurmountable, God. It's insurmountable. I told the sheriffs. I told the state police. I told the post office. I told everybody in town, and nobody's listening. And now I have a $500 problem. What's the word? What's the word today? Lies. Lies. In another classroom, it's defense mechanisms, right? In another classroom, it is misattributions or attribution theory, right? I'm trying to think of what we're saying in the philosophical classroom. Happiness, right? In this classroom, the $500 problem or the $5,000 problem or the $500,000 problem or the $5 million problem, they're all lies. They're lies. Because all I need to do is go dunk myself in the River Jordan. In the River Jordan. All I need to do is dunk myself in the River Jordan, not the Sea of Galilee. Of course, that'd be clean. It's huge. But it'd be salty. Yes, it would be. No, the Jordan River. That's all I got to do. Everything else is a lie. So a couple things now. What's your $500 reaction, right? What's your $500 reaction? So you kind of want to think the other classes we're going to be, that's what we're talking about. What, because if we scale down, what's your reaction to it? If we can scale it down, we can target it, right? We can target it. We can say, this is what you need to do and not that. All right. So we scale it down and then we target it. But the $500 so that reduces the $500 reaction. The $500 problem. So it reduces the $500 reaction, in particular when you have a $5 problem, right? But the $500 problem is also reduced. And that's pretty significant, right? From a spiritual perspective, we've got the power to dunk in the River Jordan 7 times. Now, you're like, okay, Dr. Feravich, I get it, because now if I dunk in the River Jordan 7 times, that's kind of hard. I live here in Michigan. So yeah, now you're talking about something difficult, and now I get it. Now I get it. For my $500 problem, I do have to go to fly to Israel and figure out, hopefully cross my fingers that some, terrorist attack doesn't happen and I'm safe all the way there, and then go to. So yeah, I get it now. My $500 problem really is getting a $500 reaction, and that makes sense to me, Dr. Feravich. You know the intention of what I am saying, right? You know what I'm saying. What I'm saying is your $500 problem is a lie. Your $500 problem is a lie. And that's a good place to be, right? That's a good place to be, because then really, it does help me learn exactly what the lesson is that we're here to learn, which is I can't do it myself. I can't do it myself, right? It doesn't, and that's all it takes is a dependence on my neighbor, To give me the whole truth and nothing but the truth? I don't think so. On my spouse to be here right now when he's deceased? Right? Who am I supposed to depend on for that $500 problem? So that's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about, and then it becomes, well, a real issue of faith, right? It really becomes a real issue of faith, doesn't it? Because then it's like, well, Dr. Feravich, what am I supposed to do? Sit on my hands? Is that what I'm supposed to do? $500 and look to God? Is that what I'm supposed to do? And not take my medical practitioner's advice? Is that what you're saying as you sit over there and roll your eyes about the medical industry? Is that what you are saying? To reduce my $500 cancer problem to a $5 problem as if it doesn't exist? No, of course that's not what I'm saying. God is no respecter of persons, remember? Remember that? That was a topic a couple topics ago. God is no respecter of persons. You will suffer and you will pray and you will feel that God has not answered or heard your prayer. Guarantee. Look for it. Look for it. You better look for it. Not to prepare yourself in great defense. To see the miracle. To see the miracle. What is it in our trials and tribulations that God promises? They are to glorify Him. You're like, yeah, sounds pretty arrogant, God. A little arrogant there, God. Oh, really? Really, Annette? Because I just heard you ask for a miracle. You want me to do it or not? You want me to show you my glory or not? And the same goes for you. Do you want to show me your glory or not? I hope you do. I hope you do. I hope you want to be that shining star. Because that's what we're looking for. When we're saying answer my prayer, it really isn't the simplest thing. Help me find that lost credit card. Because why? Because I might find that lost credit card, and that's about the best I can do to depend on God as for a $5 problem. Not for my $500 problem. Forget about it, right? And certainly not for my $500,000 problem. Certainly not. Guarantee you will pray. You will be without. You will hurt. And you will pray. And you will not see God answer your prayer. Look for the miracle. Because in our trials and tribulations, there He is. Ready to be glorified. Ready to be glorified. Do you want to do the hard work? Or do you want to just go and dunk in the Jordan River 7 times? To glorify Him. To glorify Him. I don't want to glorify Him. You just asked me to perform a miracle. What do you think is going to happen when I perform that miracle? I will turn your $500 problem, your $500,000 problem into a $5 problem. So we started there. We started there with our $5 problem. What if it's not a $5 problem? I'll turn it into a $5 problem. I'll turn it into a $5 problem. Okay. More evidence. Think about your problems, your big problems you had, your big problems you had 10 years ago. What? Be specific. Be specific. 10 years ago, you were being bullied in high school. Be specific. Do you still have that problem? Did your $500,000 problem become a $5 problem? Yeah, Dr. Feravich, but it wasn't because God answered my prayers. Now with the miracle. I don't know. What I know is this. This is what I know. I know people pray long and hard about their real $5 million suffering. I know that. And I know we all will, because God is no respecter of persons. The sun rises and sets on the sinner as well as the saint, right? We will all have $500,000 problems. And some of us will have a $5 million problem, right? Some of us, not all of us. I don't think so. I don't know. Maybe it's all perspective, right? I don't know. I don't really know about that one. But again, you ask for a miracle. Is your $500,000 problem that you had 10 years ago, is it still there today? And then, if you can say yes, why? If it's still there today and you could say yes, why? Have you kept that baggage on? Have you kept it with you as a, suit of armor, as a badge of honor, as a wounded heart? Do you still have the problem, the $500,000 problem you had 10 years ago? I don't know. All I'm saying is that a $500,000 problem can be diminished to nothing. It can be, maybe time. Once, like I said, but Dr. Feravich, wasn't God answered my prayer. It was simply time. I don't know. But if I didn't look for the miracle, I know I would never see the glory of God in the $500,000 problem that I really do have. If I didn't look for God, I wouldn't see him. Seek and you will find. But if you don't see him, if you don't seek him, his glory, I don't want to see his glory. You asked for a miracle. You don't want to see his glory? Then don't ask for a miracle. Right? So, but Dr. Feravich, you didn't answer my prayer. Well, you didn't want to glorify him. So you didn't get your miracle. You didn't see that it was important to glorify him. Now, hear me loud and clear. I just said we will have $500,000 problems. We will all pray to God, and we will all feel like God didn't answer our prayer. All I'm saying is tune in, tune up, because God told us that in our $500,000 trauma and experience, there he is. Well, I don't need to glorify him. Then don't ask for a miracle from a God, from the God. Then don't ask for a miracle. Yahoo! How about that? Want to get to our slide? We had fun with this one. Go back yesterday and the day before. We had fun with that one. I had fun with that one. This class, I walk out of this class with most of the time, more than any of the other classes, feeling good about this class, and least prepared. The class where I rely on God the most to steer me in the class. I'll have some idea, right? Because I have to have a name. I have to have a name for my chalkboard PowerPoint. So I get a name, so I have some idea. A lot of this is going to be talk like this, though, right? It's gotta be. It's gotta be. And then you put your own pictures in your own mind. Sometimes I'll help with the visual. Sometimes I won't. So our $500 reaction is a trigger. Today, I asked you to think about when you engage in that $500 reaction, right? When are those times? And you could talk about it when you can think about it in reality, when you really do have a $500,000 problem. But often the behaviors translate to even $5 problems. I'm going to say that one more time. Often the behaviors that we engage in when we have $500 problems are the same behaviors we engage in when we have $5 problems. So in your little mental exercise, think about when you have a $500 problem or a $500,000 problem, look then, take the lens and put it on you. Don't put it on the situation. So easy, that's in our mind's eye. What exactly happened during that $500,000 problem? Our mind's eye sees what happened out there. Now, take the lens of the camera and put it on you. What were you doing? What were you doing? No judgment. Just describe. What were you doing? You could have been crying. You could have been laughing. You could have been angry. You could have punched a hole in the wall. You could have bit your lip. I don't know what you did. I don't know. In your $500,000 problem, you've identified did you see that? That little nerve thing in my neck? Again, a little tiny spasm. Wow. That $500,000 problem, in that $500,000 problem that you are doing your mental exercise on, how did you react? All right? Were you cool? Did you write everything down to solve your problem? Did you weigh your options? Did you talk it over with a friend? What did you do? In this day and age, we have people who are getting triggered, who are having a $500 reaction to a $5 problem, which means a $10 million reaction to your $500,000 problem, right? We can still have $500,000, but imagine the reaction to that. What do you do? Honestly, really, what do you do? There are all kinds, because if we're here, right, and we need some spiritual rebuilding, and we need some mental rebuilding, and we need some emotional rebuilding, then we really need to, as I've said all day today in the classes, dissect that behavior, right? We can do it by looking at a $500,000 problem. Does that reaction translate to a $5 problem? Okay? All right. When we talked about the defense mechanisms today, I defined several of them. I'm going to tomorrow finish defining them in Thursday's class, but you can take a look at those. But when we are reacting, what we typically do, especially when we have only a $5 problem, is we typically engage in defense mechanisms. When we do, that indicates a wound. What that wound causes is internal chaos, internal consternation, right? A boiling point, anxiety, depression, whatever. There's internal turmoil that is going on when we feel defensive, when somebody hits a wound. All of a sudden, and then what do? Well, then internal chaos becomes external chaos. It becomes a behavior. No matter what, this becomes a behavior. Now, if you're here and you're talking about triggers and $500 reactions to this kind of stuff, then what you are talking about is typically an unproductive, inefficient reaction, right? Which then brings about bad choices, which then brings about the guilt and shame that you have there, right? And then what do? You begin, I had to look at it, you begin seeking. We begin seeking to repair the wound, right? We have to repair the wound. So we seek what? What do you seek? You seek a miracle? Do you seek God? Because those are two different things. Do you seek a friend? Do you seek isolation? Do you seek somebody to feel sorry for you? This is a licking of the wound is what I always do. You have to lick your wound. Is that what you do? But we have a natural inclination to seek, right? Do you seek justice? Do you seek the truth? Do you seek somebody on your side? Do you gather your troops around you? What do you do? And then the thought of how healthy that choice is. We're in the spiritual classroom, right? What's the choice? Well, if we begin seeking, who are we supposed to seek? Some of this is easy peasy, right? Dunking the Jordan 7 times. Jordan River 7 times. Some of that's easy peasy, right? Seek, who are we supposed to seek? Him. Okay, all right, so I have got to get to our reading room. I spent a little extra time here since I got on late. But thanks for joining me. I just love this classroom, even though I get a little nervous sometimes about, oh gosh, am I going to bring it home for everybody like I want to? In the regular classroom, everything is on a timeline like this. And in this classroom, I could really slow it down so that I hopefully bait you with some delicious stuff to think about. And then that way you can go and do your own travels in your own journey, in your own deep dives in research or whatever. But I wish that you would share it with me in the comments if you do that. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. We are in the Spiritual Connection classroom. And yeah, I'm the teacher. Thanks for joining me. And I'll see you back here at 2:15. So 8-minute break here. And we are going to do at least 2 chapters. Yesterday we did 3 chapters, so we shall see. Starting with chapter number 7 in The Mostly True Adventures of Homer P. Figg. All right, so join me. It's a really good story. Okay, I'll see you soon. Thanks.